All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session for term four. Really looking forward to this. It's going to be nice and restful, one would hope, and very interesting as we undertake our spiritual conversation. I'm just going to hand over to Laura Kings, and she will introduce our guest, and we will get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is our second last professional learning session for the year, and next week we'll be talking about integrating social emotional learning into the classroom. But this week we're talking about deepening understanding and spiritual connection in the RE classroom, and I'm quite excited about this session. I know I say this often, but um, I've been looking at different ways we can improve literacy in the RE classroom as part of whole school literacy plans, and also just to deepen understanding with students. And when we were doing our session in I think it was term two on reading comprehension in the RE classroom, a little penny dropped in my head. Because if anyone's familiar with our parent organisation, Jesuit Communications, we're part of the Jesuits in Australia, and our office is infused with Jesuit and Ignatian spirituality. And as we were sitting there talking about comprehension, Danielle Collenbrander, the lady who we had as a guest, was talking about discussion. And I was thinking about our meetings and how successful our meetings are. I've never worked in a workplace that has such effective and respectful meetings. And it's quite defining. And I suddenly thought, oh, I'm an idiot. Why haven't I talked about this in professional learning sessions before? This is the perfect mode for deepening understanding in the RE classroom. And it took me a while to talk people around to introducing the spiritual conversations as a mode, but it's just perfect for deepening comprehension and discussion. So that leads me to introducing our guest for today, Anne Slingo. So Anne brings a background in Ignatian spirituality and many years' experience as a primary and secondary school teacher, a religious education leader in diocesan and independent Catholic schools. I think she's most recently been at Xavier College in Melbourne. Her passion is accompanying others to deepen their spirituality. Anne is an Ignatian formator, a giver of the first spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and has studied Ignatian spirituality in, I think is it Manresa in Spain. She holds all the right all the right qualifications for people like us, probably the same ones that many of you in the audience have. And so I'm just welcome today, Anne. It's so lovely to have you. And Anne is actually going to take us through our spiritual conversation today. We decided that instead of me interviewing, it would be better if we learnt by doing. Just really quickly, I'm just going to, so while you all collect yourselves and get your cup of teas ready and all that sort of thing, I'm just going to share screen for a minute just to show you my crazy brain and where I'm coming from. So I just wanted to talk about Ignatian spirituality and literacy integration. So spiritual conversations don't just deepen faith, they can strengthen literacy. When students engage in dialogue that invites reflection, curiosity, and connection, they learn to think with and through what they read. This approach nurtures understanding um, rather than prescribing answers, meeting students where they are and helping them grow in both comprehension and faith. So it enhances literacy because it models active reading and listening. It encourages prediction, summarizing, and questioning, and supports critical thinking and reflective writing. So, by engaging students in structured, meaningful discussion, teachers help them explore ideas more deeply, learning how to think, not what to think, in a way that honours both the intellect and the spirit. So, if you want to see that really, really overt connection, I just made sure you had that and you could see it and read it. I've done a handout. So, whatever I take from today's conversation that I can add to that, I'll put in that handout as well. And they always appear under the underneath the recording in the archive, so you can actually get to the PDF there and print it out and share it with your staff and all that sort of thing. So I've done like tons of talking now. And I'm really here. We're really here to hear from Anne. So Anne, is it okay if I hand over to you and you can take us through a spiritual conversation?
Thanks very much, Laura. Lovely to be here and to share with those people in the call my absolute passion for this way of proceeding. We have a paradigm in Ignatian education, or indeed in Ignatian spirituality, but as teachers, where we give a student or someone an experience, and then we say what happened. So instead of being, the sage on the stage, the scribe on the side, I think it is. And we hope that the students that come through our school learn, as Laura said, we're not telling them what to think, we're teaching them how to think. So without further ado, I am going to give you a spiritual exercise, and then we'll follow up with a spiritual conversation. And at the end, I'll try and teach about it as I go along. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions if you want to ask me what happened there and what was all that about. So the exercise that I'm going to give you today, because I have been a teacher for over 40 years and I know what this time of the year is like, it's called rest. And I didn't make this up, but we're invited to bring a cup or a glass of a relaxing drink. Could be a cup of tea, could even be a glass of wine. And this is a symbol of my need to take a rest. So I'll just wait for 1 minute or so in case anyone doesn't have a cup of tea or a mug with wine in it, or a mug of tea, whatever it might be. So I'll just give you 1 minute and then we will begin the exercise.
I'll very quickly say in the minute too that if you have any questions as we're going through, pop them in the chat box. Yep. And we'll put them to Anne at the end of the session.
Okay, so I'm trained in this work by Father Michael Hansen. He's a Jesuit, and this exercise called rest comes out of his work called God's Field Hospital. So I hold a cup or a glass of a relaxing drink, and this can be a symbol of my need to take a rest. I remember a small story of someone who helped me to rest when I was too tired to see my need of it. Small story of someone who helped me to rest when I was too tired to see my need of it. And I hold that memory. Perhaps I begin to feel touched by the spirit of rest. I desire to rest. And I hold that desire as I listen to Scripture. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. So they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. So in my heart now, I name all the ways I would like to rest. I name all the ways I would like to rest. I ask the Spirit of rest for the twin gifts of rest and leisure to recharge myself for the journey ahead and to savour precious moments with family, with friends, with nature. And I breathe in the spirit of rest. I imagine and feel the spirit of rest breathing into me, breathing refreshing rest into me. I am recreated. I breathe the spirit of rest in deeply. Wait. Then breathe it out through my need. I breathe it in deeply. Wait. Then breathe it out through my need. Especially where I am in need of healing, perhaps trapped by overwork or overcommitment, or just feeling plain exhaustion. And I repeat as desired, breathing, resting, renewing. Breathing, resting, renewing. And as a group here, at nearly 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, we breathe this spirit in and out together. And I consider 2 questions. At the beginning, we thought of a small story of someone who helped me to rest when I was too tired to see my need of it. If possible, how might I contact or reconnect with the one who convinced me to rest? And secondly, who in my life urgently needs healing rest right now? So to who and how might I pass on the graces of this exercise. Who in my life urgently needs healing rest now? So in preparation for a spiritual conversation after our exercise on rest, I invite you just to jot down a few things. I'll give you some pointer questions, but they're just suggestions. So that exercise was called rest. Just jot down what happened for you during that exercise. What were some strong feelings perhaps that came up? Memories, and what prompted them? What happened? In Ignatian spirituality, or Ignatius referred to consolation and desolation. Consolation is an increase in faith, hope, charity, happiness, love, joy. So in that exercise, were there any increase in those feelings for you? Was there any consolation, any increase in faith, hope, love, joy, connectedness to myself, to others, to God? And in the contrary, desolation, where I felt perhaps some disconnection, out of whack, or I'm feeling out of whack. Just disconnected to others, to myself, to God. Any dryness? Did I feel any of that? And what was pushing up there for me? Just make a note of them. Were there any surprises in praying that exercise? Any aha moments or shifts in understanding? I make a note of those. Any light bulb moments? Is there an action I wish to take after praying that exercise? At the end, we thought of someone perhaps who'd helped us to rest, and we might have thought of someone who needs rest. So is there an action I wish to take? So we're going to move into spiritual conversation now. If we were all in a room together, we would probably be sitting in a circle and so how I think the best way to do this, in the third, there's different rounds of spiritual conversation. In the first round, I should say spiritual conversation is the gift of being heard and the skill and freedom of deep listening. It's treating others gently and kindly with love and of noticing God at work in my life. So it's an active listening and speaking from the heart. The basic question is, what's going on in the other person and in me, and what's God up to here? So in the first round of the spiritual exercise, the invitation is to share something that has come up during that prayer. So for us, the prayer was the exercise on rest. And the freedom here, which I think is such a gift, is that the rest of us just listen. We don't have to agree. We don't have to understand. We don't have to troubleshoot. We put the person who's speaking on sacred ground. We remove our shoes before the other. And then the next person speaks. So in this, the way we're doing it here, I suggest that it's an invitation, not an expectation, that you put something in the chat that came up during the prayer. And so I will hand over to the chat now, and the invitation is for you to share something that has come up for you during that exercise. Just another minute or so here to share something that came up for you. So in the next round of a spiritual conversation, and again, if we're in the room together, I would encourage this as more of a dialogue rather than sharing and a listening. Was there a common theme that I was struck by, or something that I expected to hear but didn't hear? A particular sharing that I was touched by? Any insights? Were they? This round is sometimes called a mini discernment because we begin to see where signs of the spirit are in action in our group. So for this second round now, the invitation is to pop in the chat something I've been affected by, some sharing, a common theme, perhaps an image or a word or a phrase that came up when you read what other people shared, any insights. So we'll allow 5 or so minutes for that to happen. Another minute or so. Thanks, everyone. Let's bring our spiritual conversation to a close by praying the glory be. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you, everyone. So, Laura, I didn't notice if there are any questions in the chat, but
I haven't seen any. I was just thinking, sorry, I was having a moment of mortification there where I was like, oh goodness, we're saying the glory be, and I was just doing a little bit of admin in the background, so apologies. But yeah, thank you so much for that, Anne. So a couple of things, I noticed if anybody has any questions, please pop them in the um, but we often go to a third round when we're doing it in the classroom as well. But we're just doing a quick little demonstrator today. But I was noticing my own fidgetiness because I was trying to participate and also have my professional hat on too, and it really made me think about those kids in the classroom who
Yes.
have trouble sitting still.
Yes.
So, do you have any tips for us about how to
Yes.
support those kids?
So my experience of I've done this with younger students, but also right through to year 12, and with year 9s, Gabrielle. So Ignatius was great on repetition, and like anything, it's an exercise. So the more you exercise, the better you get at it. And ultimately, I find that once, like I say to the kids, this is a way of praying that you will never have experienced before. Come with an open heart. That's all I ask of you. Just come with an open heart. And I also explain to them, how lovely it is just to be listened to and not to be interrupted, and how freeing it is just to be able to listen without having to troubleshoot or whatever. So I can honestly say they get better at it and in general they understand the value of this way of conversing. I move around during the journaling time and during the spiritual conversation, and I do place my hand on shoulders and sort of do little calming things. But it's been my experience that after a bit of practice, they just welcome it. They get into a zone and uh, they write things like, wish we'd known about this sooner, or that sort of thing. The other thing that I find, and I have to say I've taught boys mainly, boys like a hook. So at the end of every exercise, I would say, what's the tool that you've got out of this exercise? And they might say, okay, rest is important. And, or they might say, I like a cup of tea, or whatever it might be. But they like to have a little hook. Another exercise that I do with them, I bought this bit, I teach them to plait these 3 pieces of wool, and that in itself is a bit hilarious. But, that whole idea of together we're stronger than on our own. And there's an exercise about that. And I have to say that I see these little green plaits in blazer pockets for the rest of the year. So a little takeaway sometimes can be great from the exercise, whether it be a little picture or something that reminds them of the graces of the exercise. Yeah, so I'm just seeing that people talked about, saw the year 9 one. How would you manage this with class of twins of year 9s? Yeah, so that really, you really have to be pretty firm about laughing at one another's sharing, because, and I sort of do find that they actually do love each other. And, I sort of say to them, look, you're loved here. We know you love each other. So, you just hold each other in this sacred space. And the other reflection that comes out of it often is that they hear things from each other that, even though they're working with those other students and playing with them and doing everything with them all day, they have no idea what others are carrying, and that deepens their relationship. And they also hear the same challenges that they're experiencing as well. So that's where that third round comes in, where there's a communal discernment almost. Oh, okay, I thought that too. Yeah, so.
Thinking back to when I worked for a little while with daycare students. So I'm like you, I'm high school trained, and before I had my kids, I was also in a boys' school. But then, well, my son was at kindy, I got invited to go and work for a company that went and worked in daycare centres. And I was thinking about that when I was doing this. How do you do this with the little kids? And I think it's overtly teaching them the skills first
Yeah,
of
it is.
turn taking and listening. And what the great thing is, the message stick, holding the message stick in the circle,
Yep.
and you only get to talk when you're holding the message
Sure.
stick.
Yep.
Those kids who have trouble, yes, you might be near them, but they might be sitting on their wobble chair, or they might be holding their fidget, and a quiet fidget. But really, you're doing every other teacher a favour by teaching those dispositions for
Absolutely. And
listening.
them
And
favour. Yeah.
yeah, and one of the wonderful things I like about this when we're doing it at work, I'm a big talker and I have trouble holding back sometimes in conversations. So it makes sure the quiet people get a chance to speak, like everybody gets a turn.
Yeah.
And so I really like that as well,
Yes.
that you hear from some of the quieter voices. I noticed someone here mentioned examen bracelets
Mitral
that they
munitions.
did. But that is something you could do with younger kids too, is beading if they need to do something with their hands while they're listening.
Yes.
Or if you're really brave, bits of Play-Doh, or I've also
Yes.
used bits of slime in their
Yes.
little
Yes.
hands, just to, so that they can fidget while the others have their
Yes.
turn. Mm.
It's called God's Field Hospital by Michael Hansen, SJ's Jesuit. He heard the Pope say the church should be like a field hospital. So it shouldn't be like when you go, turn up and they say, oh, you go off and have a blood test and then check your cholesterol. It should be urgent care. And then after the urgent care is given, something else comes. Sorry, the Pope Francis was the one that said that, not the current Pope Leo, but Michael then wrote a whole lot of these exercises. So that's available at Garrett. I think the link is in the chat. Yep. But I find these really very accessible for students. I was going to say, so I know we've only got a little bit of time, but this is also, spiritual conversation is also a great thing to have in your meetings, in your staff meetings, and in teaching it to others. I would say, and it's a bit like what Laura was saying, where you hear from the quiet ones. If I'm leading the meeting and there's a discernment or something to discuss, I speak last, because if I'm the leader, there might be someone in the room who thinks, oh, she said such and such, so I'm not going to disagree with that. Sometimes there's a bit of a power imbalance in meetings, and Ignatian spirituality is flat. So it is good for that to train yourself, or if others need training. I mean, that's something that I do in my consultancy, is train. I've worked with leadership groups in discernment, so sometimes it's good if an outside person can tell the boss, oh, you speak last. But that's just something to think about. Were there any other questions in Laura that you wanted me to? I think, in spiritual conversation, because we're listening deeply, we're exposed to the ideas and insights of others. And there's a little tip that I think came from Ignatius. When someone's speaking and they stop speaking, you look at them, you're actively listening, and you say to yourself, is there anything else? Because how often do you find with kids and even with other adults that they're still forming their thoughts, and this is spacious like that. It gives room for us to form our thoughts without someone jumping on top of it and saying, oh yeah, that happened to me, and blah, blah, blah. So we have time to pause and think without being interrupted, corrected, argued with. Ignatius talked about my opinion is given with due respect for a better opinion. So there's a humility about spiritual conversation. And in my experience with students and with colleagues, it's life-changing. People grow in self-knowledge, and they grow in knowledge and care for others.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to, take that last opportunity, just pop something in the chat now. We are going to have to wrap up in a second. I think one of the beautiful things that spiritual conversations allows you to do is to meet the students where they are, and to walk with them, because especially in RE, everybody's at a different spot.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of allows you to have the conversations without, I don't know how to say this, Anne, without judgment, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah.
flat.
Yes, yeah. And so everybody starts to feel, once they get used to it, they start to feel safe and respected, and it can be very powerful. So I just wanted to say thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I mean, it's a gift in itself to be able to do a quick spiritual conversation, because the very first one I did, I felt a bit undone after it, because it wasn't the first one I'd done in the office. It was the first one I'd done in formation, a big heavy one that went for a long time, and that surprised me. Do be aware of that with students, that you might need to do a little debrief or something if you're on a heavy topic. But usually, when we do them in the office and things like that, I come out feeling heard, which I think is really powerful and understanding. So.